evolution of a guitarist. Every guitarist has their own journey that they travel on to get where you eventually see them, whether you see them on an Instagram post, or you saw them on a stage, or you saw them on the cover of an album, or an old MTV video, or any number of things, or the local guy down at the pub. How do you get to that point? And somebody in the comments, and man, I thank everybody for that comments on this channel. It gives me so many ideas and keeps me going and keeps great content coming out. And, just basic, real, heart-to-heart conversation and letting you know these things. And, the evolution of a guitar player, every guitar player is different. We all have a different journey, but I can speak directly to, how I got where I got today, 10 plus years before Nashville, playing music professionally, then moving to Los Angeles, playing the Sunset Strip, then moving to Nashville and playing every kind of gig imaginable under the sun. How do you get to that point? How do you get to be able to do all that? For me, it was a unique journey. But I would say that probably every guitarist out there, and this would be the earliest starting point, probably every guitarist out there starts with what I like to call cowboy chords. What are cowboy chords? Your basic C, G, D, A, E. Your basic open chords on a guitar, like you'd be strumming at a campfire. And if I were to teach somebody today, in the few times that I've done teaching over the years, and if I have to start at the very beginning with somebody, that's what I start with. I try to teach them, two chords. I would probably start with the, A and D. And why would I pick that? Because I would show them if you can strum and switch between either A or D or G or C, you can play something that starts to sound like a song. And, I would probably start with G, C, and D. And if you can learn those chords, G being the 1 chord, C being the 4 chord, and D being the 5 chord, well, how many songs do we know out there that have 3 chords? That's a 1, 4, 5. And you can mix those chords up in different orders and play so many songs. And that would be the very starting point of, getting down the road on your journey to playing guitar. But then what do you do after that? Well, you learn as many chords, cowboy chords. You got to learn all of them. And then you would probably move on to bar chords and your basic E shape, your basic A-shaped bar chords. And you would learn how to lift off one finger or change one finger and make those minor chords. And at the same time, around that same time, you would learn your first, pentatonic scale, the basic, scale that I've talked about on this channel. If you go search through my videos and search through pentatonics, I'll teach you all 5 positions of the pentatonic. And, that's where you get your basic. It's where you get your basic path to be able to, play solos, play some leads. If all you know is that basic box, there's a lot of guitar players that have gotten a long way with just a pentatonic scale. And that would be the next step, learning some basic solos, in that one pentatonic position, something simple. There's some Rolling Stones solos there's some different stuff. You've got to go and find some really basic lead guitar stuff. I wouldn't start with Chuck Berry because he does a lot of double stops and all that kind of stuff. But I would try to find a really basic, maybe an AC/DC solo, maybe a blues solo, an easier blues solo. These are things that you could pick out by ear. And that's what I used to do. I used to put on like Love You Live by the Rolling Stones, and I would try to play the solos, just like the melody of, there's guitar playing on this live version of You Gotta Move. It's just basic blues playing. And that's the kind of thing that I would sit around and work on and learn. And I would start to see some of the shapes on the guitar, start noticing where the guitar repeats these shapes. That'll get you moving around the neck. And I've shown some of these patterns in some of my older videos where I talk about, learning. And I've given some online lessons where I've shown people, look, if you know this, you can move this shape, in 3 octaves up the neck. And, the guitar has a lot of patterns in it. So I would start, with learning major and minor pentatonic, using the same shapes to create 2 different sounds. This was really important. And I got that down. I got all the basic bar chords down. And I was playing in bands at that point. If you get just that much and you've got some natural ability and a good tone and a good vibrato, working on vibrato, emulate vibrato that you like. Try to find somebody that's known to have a good vibrato, like old, Clapton stuff, or maybe B.B. King, and try to emulate their vibrato, because that's going to be crucial to you sounding polished. And then for me, once I got to that point and I was playing in garage bands and I was the local, cool kid that could play, lead guitar, then I took a summer and I went up, I think it was a 2 or 3 week program at Berkeley College of Music in Boston. And I don't know if they still do this, but it was a summer program for kids, not even, out of high school. And I went up there and I got exposed to different music. I got exposed to theory. I got exposed to more scales. And the idea of ear training and the idea of, playing jazz songs. And, I'd done a little bit of that in high school. But I went up there, I went up to Berkeley, and I saw guys at the time, fast guitar. Al Di Meola was one of the premier guys. And I started seeing guys playing these repetitive patterns and playing them staccato and playing them very fast. And there were guys that could fly around the neck way better than I could. But that sent me on a path to start working out some phrases, adding more notes to the pentatonic, learning where you can add the 6 or you can add the 7 or, you can add the 9. You can add some of these color notes, to the scale, giving you more notes. Start mixing in chromaticism, playing the notes in between the notes that you're trying to play. If your pentatonic is 4 and 1 is the fingering, well, you've still got these in-between notes. Start experimenting with adding extra notes and coming up with your own patterns. In my day, we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have accurate tabs. I mean, I was getting started, way before all this stuff. So seeing other players, interacting with them and seeing what they're doing and watching it, and then going to my room and say, okay, man, I'm going to work on my speed picking, and I'm going to work on my staccato, and get some of these other tones in my playing. And that sent me on a path of, okay, really got to practice this. This is like something you practice for hours a day. Don't think that any of this is going to come overnight and you're going to sound incredible, after a couple of weeks. But, as far as the cowboy chords and the playing songs, think going back to when you first start out, learn enough chords to play a song you like. That will motivate you to, once you realize, oh wow, I'm playing this song that I've listened to, and now I can sit along and I can sing this song and play it. That is going to give you motivation to continue on. And as I would learn something and something that I heard or something I saw somebody play, it would motivate me to go further. And so, each playing situation, whether it was playing in the folk group in Catholic school and then going to public school, and they had a jazz band, and I said, well, let me, I had guitar instructors locally, but, they did a great job. But, the learning guitar was such a new thing. I mean, you figure this was the mid 70s, and everybody was still trying to figure out what was going on with guitar and how to teach it and how to do it themselves. I mean, I was watching the evolution of guitar pretty much happen in the 10 years before I was born, and then all through my life, hearing it evolve. So I was able to kind of follow along with the evolution of guitar. Now, I think modern guitar playing and gent, that's not something that I have been able to really pick up. I don't have a feel for that. But all the other styles, once I got to Berkeley and I started, working on my picking and coming up with some other lines and trying to get some jazzier style lines, learning jazz chords, your basic garden variety jazz chords, major sevens, minor sevens, dominant 13 chords, 6 chords, 9 chords, and mixing up and knowing where the different notes are. Start learning theory and knowing, chord shapes and where the 1 is on the chord and where the flat 3 is and where the 5 is and the sharp 5 and the flat 5 and the 9 and all of these extensions and everything. Learning all this stuff, it's a gradual process. And each new tool that you add into your repertoire of, guitar tools will further your ability. So once I had done the Berkeley thing and I came back home, and now I've got all this more experience playing jazz, more, experience with chops, building my chops. And I came back with, even more ability. And so by that time, I could play just about anything I spent my time to work on. I could play, top 40 and all that. So that's when I started playing professionally, playing at Busch Gardens, played in a pop show there. I then went and did that. Then I got hired to do the country show the next year. Now, I was not and still am not like an amazing country player, but I knew, okay, these things kind of lean more heavily on the major pentatonic, and I tried my best to sound authentic. But man, it was the 80s. And my brain and my heart were on a West Coast guitar style, a hot-rodded West Coast guitar style was kind of what I was starting to lean towards at that time. And so I did my last year of, high school, and then I started playing professionally. I went to college for a couple of years. And I played in the jazz bands in college, jazz ensemble, and, a jazz lab where we would, learn stuff. And I learned a couple of straight ahead jazz guitar solos, and worked on my playing still another couple years. Well, then at that time, I started, like I said, I was playing professionally. When I get out of school, I'd go and I'd play Busch Gardens. And then when Busch Gardens, the season would end, and I decided I wasn't going back to college, and I was going to wait and go to G.I.T out in California. I had a period where, okay, now I don't have a job, and it's like, mom's like, you got to get a job. And I went and I did a guitar competition for Audio Light Music. It was, no, it wasn't Audio Light. It was Alpha Music in Norfolk, Virginia. And the contest was at the Boathouse. And I remember going to that. And I remember there was one guy that had like David Lee Roth like hair. And he wore like those, I don't know, 80s, like something Randy, what was the guy, the wrestler? Oh yeah, he wore like glasses like that, and he had spandex on. And I really didn't think his solo was anything impressive. They basically gave you I don't know if it was a 1 minute track to get up there, plug into the Marshall, and play a solo over this thing. And the guy that won was like, and I didn't win, but a guy came up to me, a guy with long 70s hair and like a Fu Manchu mustache. He's like, hey man, here's my card. Call me. We need a guitar player. So I was this 19-year-old kid, and I ended up playing in a top 40 band down at the beach in a kind of seedy area. It was called O'Sullivan's on the Wharf. And it was kind of a top 40 band. These guys were pushing 40. But we were playing Journey, and we were playing Led Zeppelin, and we were playing, Peter Gabriel and whatever, Sledgehammers, just stuff like that. Just stuff that would get, the Norfolk Navy base, the Navy guys dancing. And so, I started doing that gig before I went out to Los Angeles. But then when I went out to Los Angeles, and, I had at that time graduated, I played a Kramer guitar or a Zion Strat, and it had a Floyd Rose. So I was experimenting with the Floyd Rose and trying to emulate, Eddie Van Halen and stuff like that. And, I went out to G.I.T. And so I could already play well enough, to make money in Virginia, for whatever that's worth. And I'd played with some of the best players in the world. Now that I think about it, I go, man, I was jamming with the Wooten brothers at Busch Gardens and having after jams at our house. And Victor Wooten was one of the best bass players in the world, but we didn't know that he would reach that status. He was already playing incredibly, and those guys were amazing. But I had no idea that he would soon take over the world of bass. And I was jamming with a legend. We were just guys in Virginia, man. There were some incredible musos in Virginia. Virginia didn't have great bands. It had a few, bands that were popular locally, but man, the level of musicianship, there were some incredible players, guys that could hang with Victor Wooten, and great keyboard players. And of course the Wooten brothers, they all played. And so I had played with some incredible players at that point in time. And I moved out to LA. And so I already knew, like, man, I know I'd already played with some great cats. And I went out to LA, so I would see through the posing and the wearing outfits to go to school that I would see at G.I.T. But I learned some great things at G.I.T. I learned how to play over altered chords. I worked on my jazz playing. It really just gave me one more year to grind and really focus on guitar playing. So I would say that was that last year of really like learning. That's what's carried me through to be able to play different styles and, play, stuff that has more of a jazzier sound. So I really studied the guitar neck. I learned as many different scales as I could. There's so much more I could learn. But, we end up getting pushed out into the world at some point. You can't just sit in your room your whole life. You've got to play. And that goes for if you're out there and all you know is your cowboy chords. But man, you can go out and gig right now with just that knowledge. So, while for me, it was a long journey to get to the point where I am now. Your journey could be completely different and you could stop, progressing in some ways, at an earlier time. But for me, I tried to really, especially when I saw the level of the rock playing out in LA, and some guys just have bigger hands or just faster mechanical response or whatever it is. And you start realizing, man, if I'm out here trying to outflash everybody, there's always going to be somebody flashier. There's always going to be somebody with more technique. And the guitar players on the West Coast at that time had more access to other players to learn from. So, people could see Eddie Van Halen in the clubs and pick up on things. People could see George Lynch in the clubs. People could see Steve Lukather playing the baked potato. People could see, Joe Diorio or, all of these amazing players that were all congregated in Los Angeles. So, man, Los Angeles at that time was really ahead of everybody. Frank Gambale with his incredible sweep picking. I remember going to G.I.T. and the first time I saw somebody sweep up close, sweep pick, and I figured it out. Okay, we just rake across. And I started learning all these minor arpeggios because it was, Yngwie was hot at the time, and that was the thing to do. And I remember learning it and being so excited and going back to my little crappy apartment and calling up Reggie Wooten and goes, dude, sweep picking, dude. And he's like, what is it? Play it for me. And I'm playing it over the phone and I'm going, blue, blue. And he's like, okay, well, what is it? And I'm like, I'm just sweeping. And I think Reggie was already doing like economy picking. And, but this was such a new thing to just go straight across with the arpeggio, one or two notes. You could start with a upstroke. If it's a two note to the one to the three and then go across, then you just rake across the strings. So, learning that and being so excited and being learning all these arpeggios, learning everything up and down the neck, all 5 positions of whatever scales that I would learn, whether, it was the major pentatonic, minor pentatonic, the Mixolydian mode, the Dorian mode, the main modes. I've talked about, probably do a video where I could talk about like, this is your garden variety stuff that you need to learn. Learning the major scale up and down the neck, learning a couple of the modes that you're going to use. You're definitely going to use Mixolydian mode. You're definitely going to use Dorian mode. You're going to use, Aeolian, natural minor. You're going to use Ionian, the major scale. And, then learning some chromaticism and learning these different things, being able to target notes. If you're trying to target one note, you can approach it from 4 frets above and descend down to the note, or ascend, or 4, 3, 2, and 1, or put the 1 on your second finger and da dee da boom, targeting notes, using chromaticism, learning how to play over an altered chord. And I've talked about it on my channel that I like to use melodic minor up a half step from the altered chord. And that for me works. I learned it, and I still work on that. I still have work to do. We all have to keep, learning as a guitar player, whether it's just one little cool note or one little phrase. I always try to learn something and improve the things that I worked on. But having that diversity of interest, playing different styles of music, playing stuff I heard off the radio, picking out little solos, learning guitar parts, learning different things from different guitar players, going to different schools, getting different perspectives, learning guitar solos, learning chords, learning scales, learning the guitar neck, knowing every note on the neck. I used to have a poster that I would keep on my wall. It had all the notes of the guitar, and then it would have all the scales and tell the name of the scale. And it was like it was this great poster I used to have on my wall. And I could just sit there and stare at it and learn something. These are things that you can do. I used to blindfold myself and sit in a dark room and put on like a Jamie Aebersold record and just try to find, and now I can visualize the guitar neck. I can literally, like, if you were to ask me, what's the, this note, or what's this scale, I can visualize those scales, in my head and the fingerings of them. So I know the guitar neck well enough to do that, but I am not, a virtuoso. I'm just a garden variety guitar player, but it took me a long time to get to this journey. But, life is not a sprint. Life is a marathon, and your journey to become a great guitarist is not something that's going to happen overnight. If you're just starting out, or maybe you're at a certain level and you want to improve, it does get quicker. It's easier for me to learn things now because I have the physical ability to play. I have some muscle memory. But, we all have our limitations and the things that we are good at and the things that we are not good at. And it's just so very important to just continue the journey. You're going to feel like at times that you're not getting better. You're going to have days where you suck. I mean, I still have days where I'll throw up a backing track and something challenging, and I go, man, I sound like what, and then there's the days where you go, man, I am nailing these changes and it sounds great. And I try to, when I practice, if I get a moment to play over a backing track, I try to pick something that's challenging that I know I'm probably not going to sound that good over, because I'm not practicing to sound good. I'm practicing to challenge myself and force myself to do something that I'm uncomfortable with. Because that way, when I'm playing my comfort stuff, that just becomes easy. Work on playing over different things. Try playing different styles. Be versatile. It's so very important to be able to play different styles, and things recycle and come back. I hear the, R&B guitar stylings come back, retro type sounds, retro rock things come back. Things just tend to come, revolve around and kind of recycle themselves over time. So if you can grab as many different styles as you can, be as versatile as possible, and learn as many things as you can, grab as many tools as you can in your toolbox to make yourself a more versatile guitarist. But in the most important sense, the most important things that I can say is enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey of learning guitar.